Okay, so the president sent a delegation after 2 weeks, and after we had to scream our heads out here. I mean, it speaks volumes. I mean, you can't make this up. When Nigerian elites lose somebody, does it take 2 weeks for them to go pay a condolence or to commiserate or feel like they love them? I mean, I'm sure when we say that now, a couple of people will say, oh, at least they went there after 2 weeks. And what has the rescue operation been like? I saw through the Oyo tape over the weekend. Very painful. I saw the story of Ahmed. I also saw the story of the villagers there. In fact, you know, proud to this time that some of the vigilantes in the area had gone into the bush and some of them were bombed and killed. So what has been done to be able to bring these people back? What has been done? In fact, Chude was, as it is when you go to anywhere, you try to, give little gifts and things like that. The villagers said they don't want any gifts. That all they want is their people back home. The other day when Governor Seyi Makinde was there, the husband of the principal was crying. That's the human calamity. Although we give kudos to them where they do well. The Papri incident, we hear that the DSS has been able to apprehend some people linked to the Papri incident, which is a good one. But when you look at this is very sad. National Security Advisor Gbajabi Amila was there. Yes, you say that's the president's strongman delegation. But it will not be bad for the president too to be there. The president is in Lagos here. It wasn't Gbajabi Amila or Nuhu Ribadu people voted for. They voted for their commander-in-chief. Or is it when it's campaign period that politicians can move around and see their people? So please, we want them to be there. And we'll like them to map out a strategy to be able to bring these people out. This week, already we're hearing about NUT saying they're going to strike in Oyo State. I mean, I feel sad about that. But what do you want them to do? I don't want strikes. I've never been somebody that's, maybe probably strike is going to be the solution to this matter. Because if they're in school season, it's also going to hurt the people. But what do you want them to do? I hear some people want to organize protests. People are now speaking up. Can we bring these people out this week, next week? At least to make this pass over us and account for everybody. And we are also talking about Oyo. What about the people in Borno? Let's not forget those people too. When will the president send the delegation? Or why can't he go himself there? Commander-in-Chief means I will be there for you. Commander-in-Chief of Armed Forces. This morning I had to read out Section 14, Section 2. And please, I'm beginning to hear a narrative I want to correct. For people that are saying that security is for everybody. No, it's not for everybody. It's for the security forces. That's why we abdicate our sovereignty to you. Read Section 14, Section 2B. Section 2A first says the sovereignty is for the people. Government derives its sovereignty from that people. That's why it's through elections. Then 2B now talks about security is the primary purpose of the government. So if you are now saying the primary purpose of government is for all of us, no. If it's for all of us, share the security votes for us, the citizens now. Maybe you had over 2 trillion is the military budget too. Share it for all of us so that we know that we are on our own.
Oh, how much are they even getting? How
much are they even getting? So we don't want a return, and that's a return to anarchy, which we've always, I don't believe citizens should carry their own arms or, the security forces, we should trust that they should be able to protect us. So this narrative on this buck passing of the security is for all of, people can volunteer information. People can, when you see something, you say something. Yes, that is good. But trying to abdicate that and say it's for all, no, it's not for all of us. It's for the security forces. That's why they are being paid and support. What we can do is to advocate for their welfare. We think they should put more into security. We think they should put more into the welfare of the military. That's why we speak up here. But as we're speaking up too, like the Yorubas say, already won. Because Justice Crack spoke up the other day to be able to help the welfare of the military see what is facing today. But it's not going to stop us from speaking up. So, please, it is the primary purpose of the government Section 14 of Section 2. So I don't want to hear a repeat of that narrative that is all of. No. Section 14 subsection 2B. I yield the floor.
The presidential delegation arrived in Ogbomoso 16 days after the abduction, following growing anxiety among well-meaning Nigerians, residents and relatives of the abducted victims. The delegation, when it finally came, was substantial. It was led by Femi Gbajabiamila, the president's chief of staff, and included Nuhu Ribadu, the national security advisor, Tunde Disu, Inspector General of Police, Christopher Musa, Chief of Defense Staff, Joseph Tegbe, Minister of Power, and Sunday Dare, Special Advisor to the President on Public Communications. And what came out of that visit? President Tinubu approved the recruitment of 1,000 forest guards in Oyo State and ordered the deployment of a specialized security unit to intensify efforts to rescue pupils and teachers. These are the facts. Now let us go deeper. Rufai Oseni was right, and here is why. Rufai Oseni's commentary, while emotionally charged and rapid fire in delivery, rests on a foundation that is constitutionally and morally solid. Oseni's central grievance is timing. 16 days passed between the abduction of children and teachers and the arrival of a federal government delegation. In those 16 days, families waited in anguish. A husband wept openly before a state governor. Videos of the abducted children pleading for rescue went viral on social media. The nation watched, and from Abuja, the seat of federal power, there was no physical presence, no presidential footprint in the communities that were bleeding. Oseni poses a question that cuts to the heart of elite accountability in Nigeria. When Nigerian elites lose somebody, does it take 2 weeks for them to go pay condolence? The answer, and every Nigerian knows this, is no. When it is their own, when power visits grief, the machinery moves swiftly. Governors, ministers, presidents clear their schedules overnight. Protocol is suspended. Convoys appear. But when it is the children of Esiele and Yawata, poor, rural, largely forgotten communities, 16 days pass before the cameras and the delegation trucks arrive. This is not just an emotional argument. It is a statement about whose suffering commands urgency in the Nigerian state. Now on the constitutional argument, Section 14, subsection 2. This is arguably the most important and underappreciated part of Oseni's entire commentary, and it deserves to be unpacked with depth. Section 14, subsection 2A of the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria states that sovereignty belongs to the people of Nigeria, from whom the government derives all its powers and authority. Section 14, subsection 2B then states clearly, the security and welfare of the people shall be the primary purpose of government. Oseni is invoking this provision against a fashionable but dangerous narrative that has been creeping into Nigerian public discourse. The idea that security is a collective responsibility shared equally between citizens and government is rebuttal, is precise and devastating. If security is for everyone, then share the security budget with everyone. Over 2 trillion naira goes into Nigeria's military and security apparatus annually. That money is not the citizens' money to spend. It is the government's allocation to fulfill its primary constitutional obligation. The moment you tell citizens that security is their personal responsibility too, you are not just shifting blame, you are quietly declaring a return to the state of nature, where every man is on his own. This is not a trivial point. It is a profound political philosophy argument embedded in what seemed like an emotional broadcast. Oseni, knowingly or not, was articulating the social contract theory of Thomas Hobbes and John Locke. The idea that citizens surrender certain freedoms and resources to the state in exchange for protection. When the state fails to protect, it has broken the contract, not the citizen. On the president's absence, Oseni's line, it wasn't Bajabiamila or Nuhu Ribadu people voted for. They voted for their commander-in-chief. It's a statement of democratic accountability, not just sentiment. Presidential presence at a national tragedy is not ceremonial, it is communicative. It tells the nation, I see you. Your pain registers at the highest level. You are not forgotten. The power of presidential symbolism in moments of national grief is well documented globally. When American presidents visit disaster sites, when British prime ministers stand in hospital corridors with shooting victims, these are no photo opportunities. They are the state made flesh and visible in moments of extreme vulnerability. The Nigerian president is in Lagos while children are being tortured in Oyo. That physical distance communicates something, whether intended or not. Having established Oseni's case, intellectual honesty requires us to examine the other side of the ledger. Is it possible, even remotely, that the 2-week gap before a physical delegation was not negligence but calculated strategy? There is a school of thought in crisis management and hostage negotiation that says high-profile political attention to a kidnapping incident can complicate rather than assist rescue operations. Here is the logic. When a president or his top delegation arrives in a community where hostages are being held in nearby forest, it does the following. It alerts the kidnappers that their operation has become a national crisis, potentially increasing their ransom demands. It floods the area with security vehicles and political personnel, making covert intelligence operations more difficult, and it can trigger the kidnappers to move the hostages deeper into the forest or to different locations. This argument has some merit in theory. Professional hostage negotiators worldwide generally prefer quiet, low-profile engagement in the early days of a kidnapping. Intelligence gathering, back channel communication, tracking before making any public moves. A presidential delegation arriving with television cameras and convoy vehicles is the opposite of quiet. However, and this is critical, this argument collapses under scrutiny for the Nigerian context. First, the kidnappers already knew they were in national crisis. Videos of the abducted children pleading for help had gone viral on social media within days. The operation was public from almost the moment it happened. There was no quiet face to protect. Second, the delegation that eventually arrived was not a covert rescue team. It was a political visit with cameras, speeches, and announcements about forest guards. If operational security was the reason for the delay, why did the eventual visit look exactly like a political media event? The logic does not hold. Third, and most importantly, the delegation informed community leaders and lawmakers that their request for the establishment of a military base in the area would be conveyed to the president for consideration and approval. This means basic security infrastructure, a military base, did not yet exist in a community that had just suffered a coordinated triple school abduction. These are not the footprints of a government that had been quietly strategizing for 16 days. These are the footprints of a government that was largely caught flat-footed and scrambled a delegation under the pressure of public outrage. There is also the argument that Oyo State is governed by the PDP under Governor Seyi Makinde, and that the primary security responsibility for internal policing lies with the state government. Under Nigeria's federal structure, state governors are the chief security officers of their states. Some would argue Tinubu was given Makinde space to lead the response before the federal government stepped in. This argument, while technically grounded in the letter of federalism, fails the spirit test. When children are kidnapped en masse, federalism does not just justify a 16-day silence from the commander-in-chief. The military, the Department of State Services, and national intelligence assets are all federal instruments. They do not wait for a governor's permission to deploy. And Nigeria's security crisis, as we will examine shortly, is a national emergency that long ago transcended state boundaries. To analyze Oseni's words only in the context of Oyo is to miss the forest for the trees. This incident is a symptom of a far deeper national security pathology, and Oseni, even if inadvertently, was pointing at it. The Southwest is no longer safe. For most of Nigeria's post-independence history, the Southwest was regarded as insulated from the worst of the country's security crisis. Boko Haram was a northeast problem. Banditry was a northwest problem. Kidnapping highways were in the southeast, but scores of children from Orire local government area of Oyo State and the Musa district in Borno State were abducted on the same day, exposing the collapse of security architecture across the nation. It also showed that the Southwest has become the latest epicenter of an escalated wave of banditry, kidnapping for ransom, and farmer-elder conflicts, fueling concerns that a region once regarded as a safe haven has slowly fallen from grace. This is a seismic development. When kidnappers can simultaneously raid 3 schools in Oyo State on the same day that children are being abducted in Borno, it tells you something unambiguous. Nigeria's security crisis has gone national. It is no longer a regional problem that the South can watch from a comfortable distance. It has arrived. And the government's response to Oyo, 16 days, a delegation, an announcement about forest guards, is wholly disproportionate to the scale of the threat. The terrorism ranking indictment. This is where Oseni's anger finds its most devastating statistical backing. Recall from our earlier analysis that Nigeria ranked as the world's most terrorized country in 2026, compared with 8th in 2024 and 6th in 2025. Nigeria is not moving away from insecurity, it is moving deeper into it. Even as the government celebrates macroeconomic reforms, rising reserves, and investor confidence, children are being kidnapped from classrooms in Oyo, while the stock market is celebrating new highs in Lagos. This is the central obscenity of governance. This is the central obscenity of governance failure. That two realities can coexist in the same country simultaneously: a rising financial market and a sinking security floor, and that the government chooses to amplify one while minimizing the other. The Chibok parallel that every Nigerian must confront. Oseni did not explicitly invoke Chibok, but the historical ghost of that tragedy hangs over everything he said. In April 2014, Boko Haram gunmen seized 276 girls aged 12 to 17 from the government girls' secondary school in the remote town of Chibok in Borno State. The government's initial response was slow, dismissive, and ultimately catastrophic. Most of those girls were never fully recovered. 110 Chibok girls eventually came out of captivity, while 109 are still missing. The lesson of Chibok, the lesson Nigeria paid for in tears and years of 276 families, was supposed to be that the government must respond immediately, visibly, and comprehensively when children are taken. The lesson has not been learned. 12 years after Chibok, children are being taken again, this time in the Southwest, and the presidential response takes 16 days to manifest, and manifests not as a rescue but as a political visit. The pattern is not coincidental, it is structural. Nigerian governments across all parties and all administrations have consistently treated mass abduction as public relations crisis to be managed rather than security catastrophes to be defeated. Now, what should have been done and what must change? A thorough political analysis cannot simply diagnose, it must also prescribe. What exactly should have happened when news broke on May 15 that 3 schools in Oyo State had been raided simultaneously. Number one, within 24 hours, the president, not a spokesman, not a media aide on X, should have addressed the nation directly, even briefly. This is not ceremonial. It sets the operational tone for every security agency involved. When a commander-in-chief speaks publicly about a crisis, it communicates to the entire security architecture that this is a priority. Resources follow attention. Within 48 to 72 hours, a covert intelligence-led operation should have been activated. And if there were reasons why a public delegation would compromise it, those reasons should have been communicated to the families through appropriate channels. Silence without explanation is not strategy, it is abandonment. Within the first week, if the president could not travel personally, and there are legitimate arguments that a presidential visit to an active kidnapping zone can complicate operations, a senior delegation with actual rescue authority, not just condolence authority, should have arrived. Not Bajabi Amela bearing sympathies, the defense minister and the NSA with operational orders. On the structural level, community leaders had requested the establishment of a military base in the area. The fact that this request had to be made after a triple screw abduction, rather than having been anticipated and implemented beforehand, is a governance failure that predates this incident. Forest communities in Oyo that border insecure territory should have had enhanced security presence long before May 15. Perhaps the most important thing Oseni said, the thing that should be quoted in every civics classroom in Nigeria, is his insistence on Section 14, subsection 2B. The government must stop outsourcing the moral responsibility for security to Nigerian citizens. Yes, intelligence tips from communities help. Yes, neighborhood vigilance matters. But these are supplements to state security, not substitutes for it. When a government that collects over 2 trillion naira in security votes begins telling citizens that security is a shared responsibility, it is not mobilizing community spirit. It is preparing an alibi for its own failure. Was Tinubu wrong to have sent a delegation after 2 weeks? Yes. Unambiguously, yes. Not because political presence guarantees rescue, not because a presidential visit would have freed the children faster, but because governance is also communication. And the communication of 16 days of physical absence from a community where school children were being tortured was, your children are not important enough to interrupt our schedule. Could there have been strategic reasons? Perhaps marginal ones, as argued above. But the evidence of what the delegation looked like when it arrived, cameras, convoy, announcements about forest guards yet to be recruited, strongly suggests this was not a deliberate tactical pause. It was a delayed political response triggered by public pressure and media outrage. Oseni and others had to scream before the machinery moved. This is the real indictment. Now, in conclusion, Nigeria has a recurring tragedy that goes deeper than any single president or party. It is the tragedy of a state that has normalized the suffering of its most vulnerable: rural children, poor communities, people without connections or cameras, and reserves its urgency for those whose pain has political consequences. Chibok became a national crisis only when the global hashtag made it one. The Oyo abductions became a federal priority only when media voices like Oseni's made the silence unbearable. Until Nigeria builds a government that responds to the pain of the powerless with the same speed it responds to the demands of the powerful, these 16-day silences will continue. The children in the forest of Oyo deserves better. The teachers who were taken while trying to educate the next generation deserves better. And frankly, Nigeria deserves better. Thank you for listening again. just like, put your views in the comment section. Share what do you think, what do you think this should have been handled. Share in the comment section, like, subscribe and share. Thank you.